Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. I have been trying to record this episode. Well, I was supposed to record maybe 5 hours ago or something like this. I was like, let me wake up early, get this thing done, and then I can just chill for the rest of the day. And then the second I woke up, I grabbed my book and I've been unable to put it down. And I just love summer. Well, technically, summer still has just one more week to go, and then I'm starting university, but I'll touch upon this in a second. I love summer because usually throughout the year, maybe let's say the academic year, the only thing I read is academic literature because I genuinely, and I know this is an excuse people make all the time when it comes to starting a hobby or doing something for themselves, and especially when it comes to reading, but I genuinely don't have the time to read literature that is not academic, that is not related to my studies. So over summer, because reading is one of my most favorite activities, over the summer I try to read as many books as possible, and I always go and lend them from the library because, support local businesses or something. I don't know. Actually, it's a national business. Um, but yeah, I just love going to the library. I can spend hours. I don't think I'm over exaggerating when I say I can spend an entire day in the library just browsing through books. If you want me to have a good time and you don't want to, you know, entertain me, just leave me at a library or a bookstore. I can have like spent an entire works day there without being bothered and still come back the day after and the day after because I will have gone only through a tiny little bit of like the tiniest section of books ever because I love browsing through books. And that's why I think I've never been to a Barnes and Noble. What is it? Barnes and Noble, I think is what it's called, the bookstore chain in America that is they have a cafe, I believe, and it's apparently a place you go to have dates. Honestly, what is this like sound that's circulating or was circulating social media when I was, still using it a few weeks ago? Cute, my dream date. I don't know what show it's from, but honestly, I relate to that because bookstores, oh my god, like I don't know if it's affected by my love for the Beauty and the Beast from when I was a child, but in my future home, because we're manifesting that I will be able to afford a home, a house, a house to turn into a home. I will have a bookshelf that is from the ceiling to the floor, and it's going to be filled with many, many books. And that's why I love summer, because I can finally indulge into reading. I personally love reading fiction books. Non-fiction, they're interesting, but I just feel like it's easier for me to distract myself and relax while I'm reading fiction. And, I've mentioned it multiple times throughout the different episodes of the podcast, but I used to love reading smutty books. Now, and I don't know if that's incriminating myself and, jeopardizing my future job prospects, but the way the job market is looking, what are even my job prospects nowadays, despite, education and qualifications, you know, yeah, it doesn't matter. So might as well incriminate myself and have fun in the process. I used to love reading smutty books. Now I feel like I am outgrowing them because or like at least I would like for them to be written tastefully because I just feel like when they're written in a vulgar and like diminishing way, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't soothe right with me, especially when I'm reading them in Bulgarian and I see the way they have been translated and the words they use to describe, private parts, it's just, oh my God, like makes me want to throw up. And now I am reading this series by Anna Huang, I think is how you pronounce the author's name, and it's the King of Sin series. I know they were big on booktok. I obviously, well, I mean, I don't know if it's obvious to you, it's obvious to me that I don't have TikTok. I deleted it, I think it was last year or the beginning of this year, because I was spending too much time on it, and I was like, you know what, it's really the little marketing I do there is not worth me spending that much time on there, because the trade-off was simply just not worth it. So I know they were big on TikTok and booktok, which is, the little, well, actually not so little, subset, like section of TikTok, which focuses on books. And the thing is, I am the type of person who really enjoys books that go viral on booktok, because I love consuming mainstream media and mainstream content and popular content, because I genuinely believe that they're popular for a reason. And don't ask me why that does not transpire in my relationship to classical literature. I've been trying to dip my toe into classical literature, but it's been a bit difficult, especially when I have to read it in English. Well, not have to, but choose to read it in English, because there's advantages. Well, there's a lot of advantages when you read a book in its original language, because you experience the story and the language the way the author intended to. But when it comes to classical literature, it's a bit difficult for me sometimes to comprehend the English, because I would like to believe that my English is good enough for me to live on the daily basis and communicate with people when studying English. But when it comes to reading books that are 100+ years old and they're in the original language that the author wrote them in, it's a bit difficult for me to understand them and appreciate them fully, because there's words that and just the way the sentences are structured, I believe personally, is way different than the way sentences work now. Because now sentences, unless they are in German, I feel like are much shorter, unless we're talking about academic literature. And actually, reading academic literature really, really helped me with really becoming proficient at the language, because I earned my certifications before I started studying in English, obviously, because it was one of the requirements for me to be accepted into university. But I genuinely believe that the day-to-day exposure to complex sentences, complex structures, terminology, and so on and so forth is what made me extremely comfortable with English, to the point where I genuinely make no difference of whether I'm speaking in Bulgarian or English now. And yeah, so that's a big plus, but it honestly took quite some getting used to. And now, just looking back on the way I used to study in my first year of university compared to the way I study now, it's so different, because I remember I would constantly pull all-nighters trying to write down the lessons and the presentations and write and rewrite the textbooks, which was what helped me in the beginning, but it was so time consuming. And yes, it did help me assimilate and just understand the content better, because I was working through it extensively. But now, the more academic literature I've been reading, the better I have become at just navigating it simply by reading it and not having to write it down. But now, obviously, with university literally starting next week for me, I've been again rethinking how I should approach studying and how to, those, I don't know if you've seen those on YouTube, the tips and tricks by Harvard alumni on how to study more efficiently. And then I watch those and I think that simply by watching those I'm going to solve my problems, and then they never do because I never practice those tips and tricks. So I just stuck to my old way of reading, which I know is not the most efficient because I read and reread and reread the rewritten read the reread the reread. Yeah, written is not, written is like wrote, right? Wrote, written. Yeah, not read, read. English again, like, and I literally just said that I feel as comfortable speaking in English as I do in Bulgarian, but also I make quite a lot of mistakes in Bulgarian. Especially recently, I've been recognizing I've forgotten a few grammar rules, which is quite embarrassing because I used to be very good at Bulgarian. And I know it's like, what do you mean? Like, it's your native language. Why would you not be good? Yeah, it's just like Bulgarian is a very complex language. Complex language when it comes to structure and grammar. And honestly, despite this language only being spoken in Bulgaria, I am super thankful that this is my native language because, sure, it doesn't find applicability beyond the borders of Bulgaria, but I think it's such a beautiful language. I think it's such a rich language, and I just love the fact that my first language is so complex to learn, to speak, and this is coming from a native, that like learning a language which is complexity level English, like, it just comes easy to me. I mean, I've always been good at learning languages. I don't know why, but I've just had a flair for languages. But learning English, I don't know if it's because I've been exposed to it since I was a child, because I started learning it when I was in kindergarten, and then I started watching YouTube, and then I was listening to music that's in the English language. I don't know if it's this submergence in the language, but learning English, sure, it was difficult at times, but I wouldn't, like, I've learned also German. German was way more difficult to learn than English. Maybe it's because of lack of this submergence in the language. I honestly don't know, but I would like to believe that I've learned English to a level where if I don't speak the language, let's say for years, I would still be able to speak it, read it, listen to it, and so on and so forth. Or at least this is what I pray for, because it would genuinely be so sad if my education is in English and then I just forget the language, because it's been so difficult for me to explain the things I know, and I know well, but explain them in a different language because it's specific terminology, and because of this reading and rereading, I just memorize things in English. And when it comes to me thinking about media, me thinking about marketing, I think about them in English. I don't think about them in Bulgarian. And it's so fascinating the way the human brain operates and what languages mean and what meaning we attach to languages, because what do you mean when it comes to different stuff, I think in different languages. That is just so crazy to me, and I don't know what language I predominantly experience life in, because obviously when I'm in Bulgaria, it's fully Bulgarian unless I'm speaking to friends from that I met outside of Bulgaria, or when I'm podcasting or watching a movie or TV series or listening to music. But my day-to-day interactions happen in Bulgarian. But when I'm in the Netherlands, I try to speak Bulgarian every single day because I try to talk to my family every single day, but I only speak the language for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. And then all my day-to-day interactions in the Netherlands, all my studying, all my connections are formed in English. And when it comes to work, we also like put in Dutch in the mixture, so it gets like it creates a beautiful and extremely confusing concoction of languages. And that is just so interesting to me. And I've noticed that when it comes to me speaking in Bulgarian, I use quite a lot of English words, which is something I really, really don't like because, again, I think the Bulgarian language is so, so beautiful and it's so colorful and rich and vivid. And even though we might not have a specific word to describe what gaslighting is, for example, we have other words. Sure, it may take a bit longer to explain what gaslighting is in Bulgarian, but that's why I think, because I'm actively trying to avoid using English words in Bulgarian, I sound a bit posh when I speak in Bulgarian because I use words you would never think you would hear in your day-to-day life when you're shopping in Lidl. But I just really am actively trying to preserve my language, which, I mean, what is preserving language? Language is a living structure. It's basically like a living being. It evolves constantly. And obviously, the more international societies become, the more languages are going to mix and ways of expressions are going to evolve and become more colorful. So I'm not trying to resist this internationalization. I think it's enriching. I don't think it's depriving of meaning. I think it's beautiful. I think it helps people communicate better and find common ground and understanding. But when it comes to me personally, I don't want to be the person who uses foreign words in their everyday language when they speak to their parents, for example, because my parents don't speak English. So I feel like me using English words when I speak to my family or close friends who are not well versed in the language that the word comes from, it will just create, I don't want to say tension, but discomfort or awkwardness that is easily avoidable if I used a few more words to describe the thing I want to express. And I started talking about books. I'll come back to books, but like I just wanted to mention this one thing. So my friend and I, we went to this one store recently because they had a discount. Doesn't matter, like I bought a really nice hoodie. Doesn't matter. And we saw a group of, see, the thing is, I'm really bad at telling people's age, especially when they're younger, because for all I know, you could be 4 or you could be 18 and I cannot tell the difference. Or let's say if you're younger than 14, 15, I would not be able to tell. Although the thing is, now I feel like children look way more mature than we used to look. And I mean me and my friends used to look when we were their age. And this is not me judging the children. Obviously, everybody experiments with makeup, with their looks, with their clothes, with the way they carry themselves, with their hairstyles. That's normal. That's part of growing up. That's part of finding yourself. And that also comes from social expectations and social pressure that's being put on those children from since they were young. Because I know the way social media exerts influence on me, and I did not grow up on social media. I cannot imagine what it must be like for your entire life to be defined, or maybe not defined, but shaped in a way by social media. Because I was lucky enough to be entitled to a childhood that was offline, and comparison and caring about looks happened later in my life, said the 23-year-old, me referring to, 13, 14, 15. Whereas for children nowadays, this exposure to expectations and stimuli to look a certain way happens way earlier, before they even comprehend what it's like to be a human, what it's like to be a person. They are exposed to and just put into molds of what they should look like. So we my friend and I, when we went to this store, and the reason I'm saying this is not because the children looked in any specific way, but it's because they were a group of, I would say, I think they were 3 or 4, let's assume 12 to 14-year-olds. I don't know their exact age, because if you're younger than me, I just don't look at you. Like, I just don't, not that I don't pay attention to you, which, I mean, like, I just don't, I'm not saying that I don't care about the children. It's just like, why would I dwell on a stranger who's a child? And I think that a lot of, grown-ups should take after me and like take my example, especially certain political figures. Yeah, just let the children be children and don't make them dirty with your existence. Okay, protect the children. And what made an impression to me was that those children, because they were, children, they were in the store, they were having fun looking at clothes and like at different items and having conversations, and they were being loud, and they were, just being children. And obviously I could overhear their conversations, and they were walking brain rot. They were a walking scrolling on TikTok or Instagram session. The languages they were using, not languages, the words they were using. I am Gen Z and I felt old, because it's so interesting how internet language just transpires into our everyday language, and just hearing words like skibbity and stuff like this, which I still to this day don't know what skibbity means. And is Gen Z the new millennials? Is Gen Z the new boomers? I guess, because there's been 2 generations after us. There's been Generation Alpha, and now this year Generation Beta started. So it's difficult for me to comprehend what they're saying, especially when they use internet language that I have not been caught up on and don't know what they mean. And it's just so interesting how but because obviously I have used internet language. Oh my god, guys, I have a story. But wait, let me finish. This sentence that I started doesn't even matter. Let me tell you this story about internet language. Oh my god. So I was working with my colleague, obviously, and I work at a fast food chain, and I make food, and my customer, they come to the counter, they order, and they're there as I'm preparing their food. It doesn't happen in the back in the kitchen, but it happens in the front at the counter, so that the customer can, because they have multiple stages of picking ingredients to their food. So, the customer is there, and they've told me what they've chosen, and you know what? Not they. I'll expose him, because it's obviously a man. Because it's obviously, why would someone else have the audacity to say something like this? And I know I'm making it such a big deal right now, but it was honestly so extremely unnecessary, because this customer honestly is so extremely annoying, and every single time he enters the store, because he's one of our regulars, I just go to whoever I'm working with and I'm like, you've got this. I don't want to help this customer. I find him annoying. He always asks for half double meat, aka another portion of meat, just, a single portion of meat extra. But he's like, but because I'm putting it into, because he orders two things, but because you're putting this single scoop into separate items, it doesn't count as double meat, so I'm not willing to pay for it. And I'm like, well, sir, it doesn't work like this. So I hate him. I hate him. I always, like, when a customer is annoying, I will find a way to charge them extra. And I know it, like, the money doesn't come to me. The money goes to a corporation, doesn't matter. But I just, like, my passion to serve justice, but also my passion to be truthful, are always in conflict when it comes to customers like these. Because if you're being rude to me, I want to charge you extra. I'm going to charge you for extra cheese or double meat, despite you not wanting it, because you are being rude to me. And despite the money not coming to me directly, I deserve in a way to be compensated for your terrible behavior and attitude towards me. And if that compensation is simply satisfaction, then so be it. And not monetary compensation. So this customer, he comes in and he orders whatever he orders. He always orders the same thing. But I'm not going to say it, because if I say what he orders, you figure out what chain I work at, and I don't think I'm allowed to say what chain I work at. So hopefully, once I graduate from my master, and not that I'm not thankful for, if my boss is listening, not that I'm not thankful for the job. Obviously, it's just like, once I graduate from my master's degree, I would love to work at something else than a fast food chain. Not There's no shame for work. It's paying the bills. It's just, not what I went to the other end of the continent for. And this is something I honestly really don't like when it comes to job interviews that I've had in the Netherlands, because it's like, let's say, and I'll say this because I was rejected by them and I only applied for them before I figured out that they're funding genocide. So fuck them. I'm boycotting them. I'm not eating there. But when I applied for McDonald's and they immediately rejected me, which was a big hit on my ego, because who gets rejected by McDonald's? But it's like, if, like, and at interviews they always ask, oh, why is it that you want to work here? And what would I say? Oh, ever since I was born in a small, forgotten by the universe town, in a country forgotten by the entire world, a country most people, the continent this country is located in, don't know exist. My passion has been to grow up and move to the other side of the continent, to a city no one outside of this country knows, just to work at this McDonald's at the night shift, which is from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. It's been my passion, it's been my purpose, it's been the mission of my life. Obviously, the reason I want to work there is so that I can make ends meet. Like, I've got bills to pay, I've got rent to pay. Why would I want to find a job? Like, obviously, it's to pay my bills. Obviously, it's because I have a passion for paying my rent and being able to afford groceries. This is just simply an unnecessary question. And so, yeah. But, I was rejected by McDonald's. Again, I hit on my ego, but then I found out that they're supporting genocide. And I feel like I would rather be rejected by a company I would hate to work at because of moral conflict than, be accepted and hate myself that in a way I am supporting this business conglomerate which is funding mass murder. I don't know. And that's why, honestly, when I think about my political outspokenness here on the podcast, I'm like, ooh, this might jeopardize my job prospects in the future. It might jeopardize my well-being in the future. And then I think about it and I'm like, well, Martina, if someone rejects your job application because you were outspoken about Palestine, because you condemned rapists coming into power, would you even want to work at that company? Because it's a blessing, and not even in disguise, it's a blessing. Why would I want to work for someone or for a company whose values I do not share? How would I be able to look myself in the mirror? I guess I would rather be rejected by the recruiter and by the company, which, I already get rejected by. Like I've told you before, I got rejected by 150 places before I found the current place I work at. And sure, it's very disappointing, it's very disturbing, it's very discouraging, but at the end of the day, I can still look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I am not complicit, and it does not go against my human belief that people are entitled to live. So, yeah, this all started for me talking about a smutty book that I was reading. But what was I going to? Oh yeah, the customer. I never even mentioned what the story was. So he ordered whatever it is that he ordered, and I'm preparing his stuff, and I'm talking to my colleague, and I'm talking to my colleague while we're working, because obviously we can multitask, because doesn't matter. And he is eavesdropping. Well, I don't know if he's eavesdropping, but he's just listening to my conversation that I'm having with my colleague. And I'm the type of person, when I speak in English, I say period and I say slay, which I know I a few minutes ago mentioned that I don't, or at least actively try to not use internet language in my conversations, but period and slay cannot be eradicated from my vocabulary, because they were embedded in my vocabulary before I made the conscious choice to be not brain rot in my conversations, although I quote memes on the daily, but that's different. And I was talking to my colleague and she said something and I was like, period. And that customer, who, like I mentioned, I hate by default, because I just hate helping him. He's very rude and just he's very, very entitled and acts like, just because I'm the one serving him, like, quote unquote, he's something larger and bigger than me and something more than me, because he's my customer and I'm the employee and I'm the one helping him. I hate those type of people. I hate people who feel like they are entitled to treat you like a piece of crap simply because they're a customer. I am so anti this propaganda that the customer is always right. No, we should protect the employees, because employees, like people who work in the HoReCa, which means hotel, cafe, restaurants, go through enough. Customer service is demanding as is, and being invalidated and your experiences being invalidated simply because the customer is always right is just really not the vibe. And so I tell my colleague, period, and that customer just tells me, and no one's speaking to him, mind you. He's like, "Did you just say period?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "That's lame." And in my head, and this, mind you, is an interaction that happened within a few seconds, but for a millisecond in my mind, I just had a full-blown crisis, because I was like, oh my god, is me saying period an appropriation of a culture? Did this term and did this slang develop in a minority, and I as a white woman and appropriating it and just being disrespectful towards a particular culture? What is going on? Oh my god, am I unintentionally being racist? And he's like, that's lame. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, that's internet language. I'm like, and then I realized that he's just trying to be petty. And I was like, well, I spend a lot of time on the internet. And then I just really wanted to charge him extra, but I couldn't. I really couldn't, because he's so stingy and he always picks a fight when we want to charge him for the extra meat that he orders, let alone if I was to charge him for simply being a C-U-N-T-Y. C-U-N-T, not the Y. C-U-N-T. Yeah, like I hated him, and since then my colleague and I, just when we see him, we're like, oh my god, that's so lame, you just said the word period and you just said slay. So yeah, I also saw those children in the store speaking in TikTok language and skibbity and labubu and whatever the fuck. It's none of my business what they choose to word as terminology and as a way to express themselves. It's literally none of my business. And why was that guy so invested into our conversation that he felt entitled to speak on the way I was speaking? Like, if men have one thing, it's audacity. And I've been so happy that I've been in Bulgaria for 2 months for a plethora of reasons. One of them being that I have been away from that customer, because he comes at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I work 5 or 6 days a week, so obviously I see him all those 2 or 3 times a week, and it's been exhausting to help him. And I know this is what I'm paid to do, but I just hate him. And there's no need for me to say, hear me out. I just hate customers. And this is coming from someone who's someone's customer as well. And because I'm so exhausted by customers and their behavior, I've been trying to be a very mindful customer and not be of any trouble whatsoever. And I'm always like, oh, take your time. Oh, don't worry. I absolutely understand it. Have a lovely day. Being a decent human being, because I recognize that the person is there to earn their livelihood and is not there to tolerate my shit. And if I have a problem with something at the store, it's not the employee's problem, because the employee is simply a face. And there's nothing I can do about the prices. I am sorry. It's not me determining the prices, and the increasing of the prices does not mean that my salary was increased. So you are dissatisfied with this, I am dissatisfied with this, but there's nothing I can personally do, because I also personally don't benefit from the increasing of the prices. So I am sorry, and there's no need for you to be a Kevin or a Karen, and just let it go. If you think it's too expensive, and again, I'm sorry, I do not determine it, just go and buy the ingredients from the store and make it at home. And this is not the type of shit that is like, oh, why buy for $15 when you can DIY it for $50? No, this is something that you can easily make at home. So it's really not my problem, and you should not make it my problem. I long for the day when I no longer work in customer service. I don't know if you're hearing my dog barking, but she is fully supporting me in my rant right now. Let me just close the window, despite me probably going to suffocate from the heat, because Bulgaria in August, it's obviously hot, despite it not being as hot as I thought it was going to be, because normally in August it reaches 40 degrees. This time it's only 33. So a win is a win. But just give me a second for me to close the window. And if I die from a heat wave while recording, at least I was a devoted podcaster. Referring to myself as a podcaster is quite cringeworthy, but cringe is a choice, so who cares? So I feel like this all started because I wanted to tell you something about the book series that I was reading, but I honestly don't feel like getting into it right now. It's just that I love reading books, and that's why I love the summer, because I can read as many books as I want, or as many books as I have the chance to, because over the academic year I just simply don't have the time to indulge in the things that make me feel alive simply because I have to secure my livelihood. And this is something that genuinely made this academic year as hard as it was, because it was one of the hardest years I've had in my life. Not simply and not only because I was laser focused on university and work, or actually, it was because I was laser focused on university and work, and because I had to increase my working hours so that I can support myself financially. I barely had any time left throughout the year to do anything that I loved besides read academic literature. And it honestly gets tiring at a certain point. And that's why I have decided and I've promised myself to at least try to do this thing. And by this thing, I refer to try and put aside 30 minutes to an hour every single day to doing something I love. And I was talking to my mom and she was like, but 30 minutes is not really a lot. Yeah, but in the grand scheme of stuff, considering that in this academic year, I, for months on end, didn't have a single day off, 30 minutes a day is more than I had back then, and it should suffice to keep me going. And I want to explore more hobbies, even if it's just 30 minutes of staring at the window or staring at the ceiling. That should be good. That I just want to make the effort to make my life worth living and make my life more than what I do for a living and what I study, because I would like to believe that I am much more than those two things, and I would like to believe that they're not defining or shaping my reality and existence and personality and identity, but they are just things I do to support myself on my way to becoming who I want to be, because I don't know if I'm there yet. And I just want to, because the thing is, despite me not having time, I always made the time to scroll. I always made the time to watch a TV show or a movie or a YouTube video. And while those things were entertaining and they served their purpose to distract me, I don't feel like they contributed much to my overall well-being in the long term. In fact, and I've touched upon this a plethora of time, I believe that the way I was abusing social media was detrimental to my well-being. So this upcoming academic year, I want to start and put in the effort into making my life into something more, romanticizing it, because who knows, if everything goes according to plan, despite me not overall having even a concept of a plan, I am, academically speaking, at least this would be my last year in the city where I moved to 4 to 5 years ago, like now starting the fifth. And it's crazy that so much time has passed, and it's the thing that's putting me into an existential crisis, because I never imagined that I would be able to say I've lived here for 4 years. And sure, I have things to show for my life there, but I feel like, because I just feel like I don't have much to show, despite me having a degree, despite me having connections and relationships and friendships and, establishing myself as someone self-sufficient there. I just feel like my life is not as fulfilling as I want and need it to be. And I feel like it's on me and it's my responsibility to make it that, to make it a livable life, to make it a life not worth complaining from. And it's just to make it a life worth living and a life I am excited to live. To not dread that I have in a single week 4 days of university, 5 days of work, and how am I going to squeeze 9 days worth of workload into 7? Good luck, Charlie. No, I genuinely think that and this may sound cocky, I think I am capable, smart, and competent enough to make my life more than what I do for a living. And I feel, because the thing is, every single year in the beginning of the academic year, I always make promises to myself that I never end up keeping up. Like, oh, I'm going to never slack, and I'm never going to procrastinate, and I'm never going to leave today's work for tomorrow, and I'm never not going to do my readings the day they're assigned to me. But then things get in the way. Either because the thing is, when I make plans, I don't think I account for the stress and anxiety and the actual time that I experience on the daily basis. And I feel like now, because this academic year is going to be my hardest and biggest academic challenge up until now, and hopefully, I don't, like I've told you before, I don't want to do a PhD, but who knows what I'll think a year from now. But hopefully I don't want to do a PhD, and it's not because of lack of ambition, it's because of I just don't see myself staying in academia long term. And unfortunately, there is such a thing as being overqualified. And I just fear that if I have a PhD, let's say, and I don't want to stay in academia, because technically PhDs are more for people who want to stay in academia, people who want to do research. And while I like doing research, I like doing research on my own terms. But what I like more than doing research is I like being creative. Not that research is not creative by nature endeavor, it's just not creative in the way I need it to be. So I fear that if, let's say, I were to have a PhD and then go and look for a job and first start to enter the work field, I would be overqualified and would have as hard, if not a harder time, finding a job than if I didn't have that education. Because unfortunately, nowadays, education is not a sufficient qualification to guarantee you a job, which is the way it was, I don't know, 20 years ago, or 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Because the thing is, education was far more valued back then. And I just don't know how some job recruiter or employer would expect me to have a bachelor and a master's degree and an 80-year experience under my belt at the ripe age of 23/24. I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's realistic. And this is why I am as stressed out as I am. But what I will try and hope, and this is me saying it now as a plan so that you guys can hold me accountable, because me now publishing this and putting it out in the open and for it to be accessible to everyone is me basically committing to it. So you have to keep me accountable. It's not your responsibility, but still, please do, because I know myself, and if there isn't someone keeping me accountable when it comes to me taking care of myself and my mental health, I am going to disregard it alongside my physical health simply so that I can spread myself as thin as possible to be everywhere all at once, which is inhumane, and I deserve more than what I give myself. So I just really want to try and, if not find new hobbies, at least go back into old hobbies. I want to not only read literature apart from academic literature for 2 months in the year, but I want to read, even if it's 10 or 20 pages a day, or every other day. It doesn't have to be me finishing a book a day for me to enjoy reading, or for me to be able to afford myself to read, because I feel like I hold myself to such high standards when it comes to hobbies and indulgences that I don't allow myself to squeeze them into something little, into the everyday, because I feel like they should be devoted more time to. And I want to, crochet more, paint more, make more jewelry, explore new genres of music and TV, and just learn. I feel like despite me being in the educational system and technically getting my education and working on my education and knowledge, I feel like I'm not knowledgeable enough. And I feel like my knowledge is not expanding, because my knowledge in marketing and media is expanding, but I feel like my knowledge of the world isn't. And that's why I want to start watching documentaries, for example. If Netflix would stop kicking me out of my own profile that I'm paying every month for. What's that all about? But yeah, I just want to learn. I want to grow, and I don't want to reserve 2 months of the year for growth and relaxation. I want to position myself in such a way that I see myself as human, who's entitled to human experiences, who's entitled to relaxation, and who is entitled to feeling something else than overwhelmed. Because this last academic year, it was a challenge. And am I proud that I sustained myself, that I overcame this challenge? Definitely. It definitely was a very much needed proof that I am that bitch in my life. That all this doubting that I do, and self-doubting isn't necessary. Sure, is it still present? Yes, it is. But do I allow it to control me as much as I used to? No, because I proved to myself that I am enough and that I have the X factor, if you will, when it comes to sustaining myself. And now that I have proved this to myself, I don't want to have to prove it to myself over and over again. And I honestly don't think I should have had to prove it to myself the first time. But this is how I saw things a year ago. And now, having gone through this, I feel like I have grown a lot from it, and it has put a lot of things into perspective. And I have seen what a burnout it can lead to. And the burnout I experienced over the past 9 or 10 months was not livable in. It was not livable through. And I honestly don't know how I survived, let alone lived. And I deprived myself so much from socializing and experiencing this and that simply because I had to go work, had to go study. And while I am happy that I'm devoted to my craft, so to speak, and so on and so forth, I want to allow myself to live, to experience, to feel, to just exist. Because I held myself to such high standards that I forgot the human things I need beyond working every single day like a robot. And just, I feel like the way I've been going through the last academic year, it's not been because of motivation, it's been because of inertia. And inertia, and as well as stubbornness, while they are the things that kept me going, I don't think they're sustainable in the long term. I want to refine my passion. And if I cannot refine it, I want to build a new passion from the ground up. And I want to just make a life I don't need a break from. I want to allow myself to be human and just feel tiredness, and allow this tiredness to be tended to rather than pushed aside because I had other things and more pressing things to tend to. And sure, I know, because that's the thing. It's such a privilege to not have to constantly be stressed about sustaining yourself. It's and it's so wrong, but I compare myself to people I encounter in the Netherlands who are not self-sustaining, who are financially supported fully by their parents and don't have to work so that they can pay rent or groceries and so on and so forth. And if they work, everything they earn is for themselves and they spend it going here and there. And I recognize that it's such a privilege. And I also need to recognize that in me trying to change the way my life is set up now, I don't have that privilege, and I should not blame myself for not having that privilege, and I should recognize that I should first ensure physical existence and then tend to emotional and mental well-being. Because this, and I believe I've touched upon this, if I have not, I can dive deeper into it another time, but tending to your mental and emotional needs is a privilege, because it means that your physical needs have been tended to. Because you cannot dive deeper into what it means to live if your pure existence is not secured. Because, Maslow's pyramid, triangle, like structure of needs or whatever it's called, you first need food and shelter and water to just secure that you have somewhere to rest, somewhere to exist, somewhere to be. And only then, after those things have been secured, can you start tending to needs that you have, but that are not crucial for your physical survival, which is your number one priority as a human being, whether you recognize it or not. And I really hope that in the process of me exploring what it's like to tend more to other things than pure survival, I recognize that I don't have the privilege for someone else to secure my physical survival, someone else to pay my bills, someone else to secure my rent payment. And I hope in the process I am gentle to myself and I recognize the needs I have and what I need to secure in order to be able to start thinking about tending to them. I just hope with the summer coming to an end and me very soon going to the Netherlands and starting what is, like I mentioned, the biggest academic challenge I am yet to face, I am gentle to myself in the process. And I don't forget that I'm a human. And I hope I'm not fueled by inertia, but I'm fueled by ambition, by passion, by feeling, by desire, rather than a routine that is so exhausting, but I don't have the time to recognize the exhaustion until after I have felt its repercussions. I really don't know. I I hope I'm kind to myself. I hope this year is kind to me. And the thing is, I am sitting here worrying about a future that I may well not even exist in. So this is one of my big problems. Always worrying about the tomorrow because of its uncertainty, and I feel like in the process, I am missing out on the today. And now, because of this overwhelming and stressful feeling, I have come to see the things I prayed for, the things I worked for, the things I strived for as something that I need escape from. And I don't ever want this to be, because I used to pray to get into that university. I used to pray and work hard to get to study abroad and to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining and financially independent. I have achieved the dreams I have worked so hard to achieve, and I don't want their achievement, the product, the fruit of my efforts, to be something I need escape from. I want to be able to enjoy them, and for me to just to enjoy the self-sufficiency, enjoy the financial, while not stability, financial independence. And I really hope and pray I have the chance to stop for a second, take a breather when I need it, even also when I don't need it, to, preventatively stop burnout from happening, to just stop for a second, take a breath, and recognize that I am living in the fulfillment of my prayers and not see the fulfillment of my dreams, the fruit of my efforts, as punishment. I hope I learn better to navigate the stress and not let it affect me as deeply as it did over this one past year, because if I do, it's going to be the death of me. And there's so much more to look forward to, so much more to experience now than worry about a tomorrow that I may not even exist in. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it brought you some food for thought. And now I need to go and devour those 40 pages I have left of that book that I'm reading. But again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye.